All right, here we are. I'm sorry, a little technical difficulties jumping on at 4 o'clock. I appreciate all of you that are patient enough to wait around. We are having the DPB show today, in spite of all the obstacles that come up day in, day out. I'm just amazed. Since I was with you last on Tuesday, I think many of you know that I came up to Minnesota with my wife to do Camp Grandma up here in Minnesota. Our grandson had a little gap between finishing school and starting his summer program. So, with two parents, dual incomes, we decided that we would interject ourselves and help out where we could. Um, my wife needed me to come, even though I was hobbled by an ankle injury, an Achilles tendon injury. I've got bruises on both of my arms. I feel like I went 12 rounds with Mike Tyson. I'll tell you right now. But my wife obviously threw out her back. Therefore, I'm here. But since Tuesday, things have kind of run away quick. We took the grandbabies out to some wonderful things. In fact, I've got a couple of guests here. Okay, you guys are in there. Thank you. I'm going to get to them in a minute because that's what the show is basically about today. As I shared with you on Tuesday, I don't even know if we're going to keep the DPB show, because it's not about me. It's about moving the needle. It's about making a difference here, restoring Illinois, making Illinois great again, saving our country. And there's so much that isn't being covered and being told to everyone. That's why the title of the show is Election Integrity. And we're going to talk a lot about that, because in order for us to get better, we got to get better. In order for us to change, we've got to change. So, me included. And so that's what I plan on doing. As I started saying, I ended up with some type of bug. Who knows? And now my wife Tanya has the bug too. I mean, it's crazy. We're up here in Minnesota. We both come down with some type of bug. We don't know if it's food poisoning. We don't know what it could be. It came on very quickly for me last night, and it was, needless to say, it was a very difficult evening. But that didn't stop us. As you can see, I have my Twins hat on. We took grandson today to the Twins game. Unfortunately, by about the sixth inning, Tanya and I, neither one of us could finish the game. And so we asked grandson if it was okay if we came back home, or at least to his home. And he said, yes, good sport. Got his mini donuts, got his hot dog, got his peanuts. And now we're back home. And I didn't know how I was going to conduct the live on Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, and X. But here we are. And so thank you. Thank you for being part of it. The comment section is open. Ryan, is there still no sound? Hold on, I'm going to get Ryan on.
Okay.
This is the antiquated way. Is there still no sound?
Can you hear me now?
Can I hear you? I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me, Ryan? Ryan's not. Ryan, can you hear me? Ryan?
Still no sound, DPB.
Huh. I don't know if that's on my end. I can hear Joanne. Ryan's investigating, because this is how things go. The obstacles there, and there was Joanne, and now she's gone. There she is. Now she's back.
Yes.
There, I can hear that. Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay.
Can you hear
I
me?
can hear you guys.
Huh. Give us a shout out. Let's see here. I don't think there's anything else I need to do, Ryan. There's the band from studio. I don't want to do that. Edit mic settings. I don't think that I can do that. Let's see. Echo cancellation. Edit mic settings for Ryan. Here, I can turn up your mic, I guess. Reduce mic background noise. Automatically just, okay. All right. Ryan, let me know. All right. So, as I said in the opening, and you might have been with us on Tuesday, Joanne and Ryan are coming in studio today. Obviously, Ryan's usually with us. Joanne is always in the chat, or most of the time she's in the chat. She's not always in the chat, but Joanne's jumping on board today because there's a lot that we need to cover about election integrity. Many of you might have seen that Tom DeVore did a Facebook Live last night where he basically covered a violation of the rules and everything that everything that we stand for as a Republican Party. It seems like if we can't get it right, then how can we expect others? I said this in the last show. We want to fight the Democrats, but yet we don't have a strategy ourselves to defeat the Democrats. In fact, unfortunately, we're still battling amongst ourselves, even though we have a front-running candidate at the top of the ticket in Donald J. Trump. That's already been settled. And as far as I know, in July 14th through the 18th up in Milwaukee, Donald Trump will be the nominee of the Republican Party. But we have this little thing, this little state convention where we were trying to select a Republican National Committee person, chairperson, and that particular person in committee was decided to be Mark Shaw. Unfortunately for Mark, the delegates didn't support him. Unfortunately for Mark now, and it's basically proven, Mark had acquired delegate credentials and was presenting those credentials on the floor so he could vote for himself. And there's rumor, and like I said, I'm not going to say that there are other credentials that were handed out, but it sounds like Mark might have requested additional credentials for other people who were not delegates from Lake County or any other county. So that's why I say election integrity. We've got to get it right. We've got to get it right in the Republican Party. If we don't get it right, then we can't move forward. So, Joanne, obviously that's not the reason you're here today. You're here today because we want to talk about precinct committeemen. We want to talk about a battle plan that is out there through CERUS. We want to talk about how it is that we can fortify the state of Illinois. No one is assuming, or nor should they, that Illinois is going to turn red for Trump. However, what we can have hope for is that Illinois is able to get enough people involved in the electoral process that we can make a difference, meaning we can get the popular vote. We can't get the electoral votes because that's just not going to happen. Not this election cycle, but soon and very soon, I believe that is going to happen as we continue to clean up the Republican Party and find ourselves with a new direction, which is going to be offered by the Republican National Committee with Michael Whatley and Laura Trump. But on the local level, Joanne, that's what we're here to talk about today. Precinct committee people. So tell the DPB show audience what exactly you've been working on for the last year and a half, what CERUS is working on, and just let them have it.
Absolutely. That's actually how I got my foot in the door. I, as a retired homeschool mom, or soon to be, my son was graduating, and in all of that call to do something else, and I went to the McLean County in Illinois and jumped in, and immediately I was told there was a need, that they could have a precinct committeeman, and they had a need for one in where I lived. So I was appointed as a precinct committeeman, and since then have stepped into other roles. But really, the essential boots on the ground, the people that know the people are really the precinct committeemen if we're doing our job well. And so the role of a PC is a couple prongs to that. But really, they're sort of like the communicator of elections to the local Republicans in their geographical radius. And it's broken down into manageable pieces of where you live so that you do know those people and that you can get the word out. When people show up at the polling places in person, there's a whole lot of, especially in central Illinois, in the center of the states, Wisconsin, the Michigans, the Ohio's, of that, hometown feel. So everybody's like, hey, how you doing? Good to see you. How's so-and-so? that rapport gets built when the precinct committeeman is doing their job. The precinct committeeman plays a vital role in turning out the vote. That is their primary job, is to get voters to the poll, make sure voters are registered, make sure that those in the household, are still in the household, and helping in those capacities. Also seeking out election judges so that we do have fair elections in each of those polling places. In Illinois, there are specific rules for the election judges and how they run that, and as there are in other states. So our PCs will look for Republican election judges to fill the spots that they need for Republican election judges in the election. And then it's a great way for them to also know who their candidates are and help people in that process. So many times we go into an election where nobody knows, like, who are the judges and why are we voting for them? Or, when I moved to Illinois, I actually moved here in January of 2015, and I asked immediately, somebody came to my door and said, can I help you, if I can help you with the elections or voting or anything? And then proceeded to tell me that there wasn't elections in the odd years. Well, that precinct committeeman didn't know the rules of Illinois very well and didn't know that there were consolidated elections. And consolidated elections that take place in those off years, those odd number years, are really the elections that matter to everybody in their towns, their villages, their precincts, because they're the library boards, they're the park districts, they're the school districts, and then the little town and village boards and things like that. So a PC who knows what's going on and knows who's serving and things like that has a really good feel into what's happening and how to help other people in that process. So the PC has a critical role. And the ultimate goal is that by it being in constant communication and being that person in the know, people are going to come to you, and then hopefully that rapport builds, and you are then inspiring people to get out to vote on a regular basis and not just every 4 years.
So thank you, because that was a very good way of kind of explaining what a precinct committee person is.
Mm-hmm.
However, the biggest obstacle I believe that we have in Illinois, and I know that Illinois can't be unique, but Illinois is unique in a lot of ways. Illinois can't even quantify how many precinct committee people we do have currently. And I always said, if we don't even know where we stand, how can we mobilize? How can we fortify the people we do have and move forward? We do know in McLean County, we have 47 out of the 141 precincts have elected precinct committee people. But when you're down at this state convention, and I kept saying, how many, to the state director, or I should say the state chair of the Illinois Republican Party, Don Tracy, how many? The chair of the chairs, our new Republican National Committee woman, Rhonda Belford, how many? You would think that we would have those numbers shortly after the convention of all the counties, shortly after the primary. Then, of course, 29 days or 27 days until each county has to hold their convention. But you think that we should have those numbers, Joanne, and right now, no one has those numbers. And I think if there's anything that your group can do, Suris, would be to find, I mean, I got to believe, I should have time to call each county chair and find out how many people were elected as precinct committee people. But that would take, it seems to me that would be top of the priority list for county chairs to have an understanding of how many precinct committee people they have. How can we attack the thing if we don't even know who we're going to put into the battle?
Absolutely. And you're absolutely right. And the other prong of being a PC, which is where knowing how many you have and knowing how it comes into effect is extremely important. And that is that PCs also have voting power. And as people saw on Saturday, a voice that's willing to speak and a voice that's out there, can be heard. And so in the role of an elected PC, every 4 years, they're the deciders in a local capacity that votes in their state central committee chair people. And then as a result, that's our representation. That board and that committee is what just happened at the state convention. And that's where our national Republican leaders are decided. And so our representatives to the Illinois Republicans gets decided every 4 years, the same year as a gubernatorial primary. And so a PC who does their job well, or a county that has PCs that are elected in all of those things, have a huge influence. Because what happens is, if you're doing your job and you get people out to vote, and you can increase the voter turnout at a local level, you get a weighted vote. So every vote that you're able to help get people out to the polls matters, because that goes towards the amount of votes that you have when you go to elect your state central committee person, and that's done by congressional districts. And then on top of that, the PCs are also the decision makers and the voters for local Illinois leadership. So the county chair people and the county boards for the local Republican organizations are also decided every 2 years in the same fashion. And so PCs, not only do they have critical influence to get people out to the polls and helping them understand why that's important, or get their mail-in ballots in, things like that, but it's also important that they actually have a deciding vote in the representation at the state central committee level, as well as their local Republican leadership. So when you say, when we don't know that number, it's important to know, because then we look at why are they not as active, or why don't people think they have a voice? And so when you we'll use McLean as an example. When we're sitting with less than a third of our precincts filled, a lot of people don't really know what is happening, and the voices aren't heard as loudly as they could be if we had 100 precinct committees filled.
Right.
But at least we know now that we have been underserved for a very long period of time in the state of Illinois as far as precinct committee people. But I think we've also been underserved because it took me until almost this year to really grasp all the nuances, all the rules, all of the little inky dinks of how to make a state party work. And for whatever reason, and I just really quickly want to break here, Joey, and we'll come back to it because I've got a bunch of questions, because you just hit upon. Sarah Froberg, always good to see you. I know things went well for you yesterday or the day before. My days are all running together, and especially in light of being at Camp Grandma, I'm trying to figure out who's going to be the better of Camp Grandma. I think the little ones are getting to yours truly. So, and then Ryan, you shared the prize news.
Yeah. Yep. I don't have a whole lot of information. I just came across Twitter.
Yeah. Trump found guilty by.
It should be no surprise to anybody.
The Biden trials, Trump wins. But I'm going to tie these two things in. When you have a district like New York City that is so heavily blue, how did they get to be heavily blue? I'll tell you how they got to be heavily blue. They didn't have precinct committee people representing the red. I would say that you would find, and there's obviously going to be little pockets throughout the country where the Democrats have a stronghold. But if you're doing nothing to push back against their juggernaut of just running the table, that's what's happening in Illinois. Chicago's a perfect example of that. New York City, Los Angeles, and there's many other. But Joanne, that's the thing. The essence is we've allowed a lot of these metropolitan areas because they're municipal elections, through consolidated elections, that's the off-year elections, to basically have their way with the Republican Party, because the Republican Party, for the longest time, said that we really don't participate in nonpartisan elections.
Yeah.
How nonpartisan are the consolidated elections, Joanne?
Well, we saw that evidenced in our last one, when we know that money and representation was put in um, to the Unit 5. So for McLean County, and we're seeing that everywhere when the influence and the money and the teachers unions get involved, it's partisan.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, of course, it's partisan. It's easy to say this is how they baited the Republicans, what I would like to call the administrative Republicans or the professional Republicans, into this let's all sing Kumbaya and play nice in the sandbox. At the same time, they are taking territory, which I hope gets into your battle plan. But when I say take territory, I don't know how it happened between 2014 in Illinois with the Quinn Rauner election and 2018, the Rauner Pritzker 1.0 election. But
oh, no sound.
Yep, we lost your sound.
Did he hit
JB
there he goes.
runs away with the gubernatorial race. I know he spent, huge money. Well, Rauner is close to a billionaire, and I know he spent a lot of money, but I just don't know what kind of candidate he was. He wasn't a candidate that represented the conservative movement of the Republican Party.
Yeah.
But JB ended up with almost 50% more votes than Pat Quinn did in 2014, meaning he had 800,000 votes shift or happen to show up on his side of the aisle. 800,000. I mean, I don't even know how you manage to go in a 4-year cycle and move 800,000 ballots into an electoral process. And I get it. A lot of people say,
could that drive it?
The elections are rigged. Okay, I get that they are. There's always been corruption. The machines are fixed. Okay, I get that. There's people out ballot harvesting and picking up ballots that, that aren't necessarily verified as far as dual signature. I get that. I get all the reasons of why it is they might have gotten 800,000 votes. But we're never going to get same-day voting with voter ID in Illinois until we figure out a way to move the needle, whether that's take some of those 800,000 votes back or create our own 800,000 votes. That's the way I look at it. Joanne, what do you say? I mean, we obviously know that 70% of the eligible voters in Illinois are registered. That leaves 30% of eligible voters that aren't registered. We know that primary elections, consolidated elections, you're lucky to get 20% voter turnout. General elections, you're lucky to get 50%.
Absolutely. And it used to be that people took voting.
Joanne, did you go mute on us?
No, I can hear. Did you? I think it's you.
Well, that made it real easy. Ryan, are you mute too?
No. Can you hear us?
Are we frozen up?
I can hear you all just fine.
Hold on. We're experiencing technical difficulty. You guys were coming through loud and clear.
Okay. Are you good now?
Let me get rid of Ryan. Hold on.
Can you hear me now?
Maybe somebody cut our feed.
Probably. I mean, that's what you get for using a phone.
Okay. Sarah says she can hear all three of us.
Sarah says that she can hear 3 of us.
There you go.
But I can't hear you, Joanne, or I can't hear you, Ryan. So, Joanne, go ahead. Since Sarah can hear you, go ahead and just lay it out.
Yeah. Absolutely. So one of the things that is really helpful to understand is that in Illinois, we do have a way, very strategically, the organization that I work with, Cirrus, we look at a lot of data, we look at a lot of numbers. And so the clients that work with us, we give them a victory number. So in McLean County, I will use that as the example because that's where I had lived. And so McLean County is one of those counties that is sitting at purple, and for the first time in its history could look blue if we really don't actively get the manpower and the precincts working the way we need them to help turn out that vote. But in McLean County, if we can get 5,200 and I think it's 5,287 more voters than traditionally come out. That does a large boost into being able to retain some of our county board seats and things like that. And that's a small fraction of those voters that McLean would have in their county. So what the tie back to the need to get people on the ground and the need to encourage people to get out to vote makes a huge difference. And so if we can increase voter turnout by 15 to 40%, it is very doable. And in McLean County, we don't necessarily have to convert people. We just have to get people out to the polls. There are a lot of people that are what we would call unreliable Republican voters, and they likely only come out in a presidential year. And so they're missing 3 and 4, 5 elections in between those seasons. And so when we can get them out on a more regular basis, that's how we keep conservative values, conservative influences in at every level. And so that's critically important in that process. And so by looking at our voters and our demographics, we try to add a layer of being strategic in that. So we want precinct committeemen to spend the time with the people that don't come out on a regular basis or need those reminders to get out and vote. Because the person who votes in every election is going to vote in every election. And so maybe a text message or maybe a really quick phone call, this is who I am, gets that information out. But we might need 2 or 3 phone calls to the person who only shows up every so often. And I'll use a very quick statistic that we were able to look at very briefly in early voting. We took the number of early voters on a particular day, and there were 1,026 Republican voters in McLean County. We had 111 of them that we would say were in that unreliable persuasion, and they had actually voted. We had asked our precinct committeemen, and at the time we only had 14 of them working on this task because we still were training up new ones from being elected. But those 14 reached out, and they got hold of 75 of that 111. And out of that 75, 42 of them hadn't voted in the last 3 years. And so if that relationship turns out, 50% of that number in people who don't normally come out and vote, and then you add 2 zeros to that, because if we could get 100 more people doing this, all of those numbers go up significantly.
Yeah, I think so
111 become, 1,100 votes, and it makes differences. We have watched in McLean County, Jacob Beard, he only lost by 8 votes one year. Ross Webb, he lost by 300 votes. So every vote that we get that's not a traditional voter and we can turn them into one has a huge influence. And then anything we get above that victory number, that number that we strategically looked at, anything above that in a state race. So when we have a gubernatorial race, when we have, when we're looking at Secretary of State and all of those, then anything above that number helps the greater cause, because we lock in our own area and we know what that looks like. But the more we get out above average turnout, it significantly helps. And imagine if below I-80, you could increase that turnout significantly. That adds a whole lot of oomph and backing to shoulder the votes that the Collier County would have to convert if we could just get people out on a regular basis. And so that becomes the critical. Get out, vote early, vote in the mail-ins, or vote on election day. All of it has to happen. So everyone has to make their vote count.
Well, I think you hit it on the head earlier when you said people only really vote during the every 4-year big races. But when you think about what happens on those off year when you don't vote for presidential races, look what happens. You lose your county boards, you lose your school boards, you lose your town. You lose all that when you don't vote, except for only during the presidential election. And then those off years are more important than just the presidential elections. For instance, up here in where I'm at in Gridley, there's probably a couple hundred people between the two lists, the two precincts. that's easily a day or two's work at that. And to get those people, and I think I know probably half of them just by knowing who they are. And I think I have a rough understanding is that they probably just vote during the presidential election, and they know some of the local races maybe, but they're probably more of the every 4-year voter because there are a couple issues that they vote on.
Absolutely. And if people understood the influence, right, because now we introduce the idea of those votes matter when we're talking about local leadership. And so if we get people and you're building that relationship, then we know that then people understand that every vote matters every year, and it's not just a cyclical type of thing. And so that's a really important factor for people. I used to say when I was a PC and I would go to the door, it was a learning process for me, but I also felt like I was teaching election 101 to a lot of people because there really was not an understanding of the big picture. And again, we'll use the county that I worked with and lived in, but McLean County has over 700 elected positions in its county, from U.S. Senator all the way down to a park commission and a library board and things like that. So in consolidated elections across the board, your own ballot may not have that many on it. It's going to only have your local races, but county-wide and Bloomington Election Commission-wise, we'll have close to 400 on those consolidated races. And so again, we miss that opportunity when those people don't come out and vote.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I had to go over to Facebook and watch you guys talking because I'm sitting here just watching your lips move. And I'm like, well, this isn't like a good show. And so I was going to suggest that I have you guys exit the stage and then re-app. But all I did was go over to Facebook, click on the live, and then came back. And now it works. Go figure. Well, I'm sure you gave an amazing description, Joanne. I am sad I'll have to go back and watch the replay. Give me the 30,000 foot view of how I know that my question, and I almost forgot about what my question was, other than the fact that we've got a lot of work to do. I think you know that, Suris knows that. How many counties do you guys, or the percentage of voters do you guys represent right now through Suris?
I think you were accurate in saying that we probably have close to 40%, probably right around the 40% mark of voters that we work with directly in the state, and that is going to go up very shortly. It looks like we have 3 additional clients coming on board, and there's a synergy that's starting to happen specifically in the central Illinois area. And I think what's exciting about that is a PC used to think they had to do their job alone. And now, with the training and the resources that they have and the groups that come together, you don't feel like you're doing this by yourself. So you have a question, some of the structures, we're trying to build infrastructure that would allow each of those areas to have a breakdown of responsibilities. And so there's an election operations chair and a PC activity coordinator in that realm. But along with that, then we want people, and various organizations will call them different things. And so in Peoria, I think it's a deputy. And so in McLean County, we call them division chairs. And so the idea of that is that they would take on 5 or 6 or break down equally the number of precinct committeemen, and then they would touch base with those folks to see how their information is going. What Suris does is we look strategically at some ideas of how we best reach and what the timing is. So currently, our precinct committeemen that are on the battle plan, we know we are in a battle. We are doing everything we can to win Illinois back to being red. That is a fight. And so as a result, we do call it a battle. And so the battle plan that we have right now, the PCs get a task every other month that is critical in strategy. And so this month, our PCs are reaching out to those unreliable voters and following up, especially with ones that they weren't able to reach in early voting or in the primary season,
Right.
and find out what issues are most critical. We are literally asking them one question, and that is simply, what is the most important or most important issues to you? And sometimes you have to talk them through it. Like, is it taxes? Is it economy? Is it gas prices? Like, we think economy is one thing, but boy, the man who's a landscaper, it's gas price. Like, everything else is affected by what the gas price is at. So our PCs are doing that. But then what happens is, now we have a record of what are those things that are most important. And so then the way we pair and the strategy that goes along with that is, we can then help the local candidates and say, here are some critical issues across the board. 80% of the people that we were able to take this survey with all feel that the economy or the taxes in the area or the school performances, whatever those issues are, we can then help our candidates who are running know what those issues are, why they're important, the majority of people who think they are. And again, then that incentivizes people to get to the poll. When there's a candidate who's fighting for the issue that's important to them, they're going to show up. So it all intricately fits in piece by piece. But it's done in a way that has not really been done by a lot of organizations before. Because a lot of times organizations have done it with pieces of paper and pencils and clipboards, and now it's all in one place, so everybody can use it.
Since coming on, I found it much easier to just go through the list and just kind of play around with the tools that I have, and it's really user friendly. So I'm excited to get the groundwork started.
Ryan's a new PC up in Gridley. Were you aware of that, Joanne?
Yes.
Okay, so you hit upon something, and I didn't catch quite all the answer, but because we have a long way to go, because we can't quantify how many PCs we truly have out there in Illinois. We know that the Democrats outdistance us as far as voting the last two gubernatorial cycles, 18 and 22. Now, they had a fall off in 22 of about 300,000 votes. So JB went from 2.5 million votes to 2.2 million. So I think that's an anomaly, one that should be studied. But at the same time, we have a different way of operating, and I think that most people don't talk about this enough, is that the Democrat machine is that very thing. It's well-oiled, it's bought and paid for. Everything they do is calculated. I'm not saying I agree with it, but you have to admire it somewhat, because they get stuff done, but they pay people to do it. On our side of the aisle, it is us. We're a volunteer army. And I know it's hard to say, golly, I just don't have time. I don't have time. Well, I love it when people say I don't do politics, because it reminds me of Stephanie Trussell when she said, that's okay, honey, because politics is doing you.
Yeah.
And I guess that sense of loss, I think we are rejuvenating, restoring the people. But it's not going to come easy. We gave up all that territory. They're not going to give it back to us. We're going to have to go take it back. And how we do that? Well, we have to get enough people, savvy people, who are able to work the metrics of the data models and get voters, excited again, get them to the polls.
Yeah.
And Ryan, I would ask you just to speak a little bit about the training you received and what you just said about the time commitment. Because I think a lot of people go, oh, this is too overwhelming.
Right.
And I'll tell you, a husband and wife team could take this on. One would come to the actual meetings, but they could work together and basically get a precinct that's really important. And I will tell you, we have strategically looked at some of the overlapped precincts, and we have a lot of need in Normal and some different areas. We have races where Judge Joe McGraw, who's running for the 17th Congressional District, that spans Peoria, who was one of our clients, that spans into Tazewell, that spans into McLean County. So that's a race that, united, if we can increase all of that across the board, that gets us more in the race. But within McLean County, in addition to that overlap, the race that Sally Owens is running for and the race that Desi Anderson is running for, there's a lot of overlap, and also with critical county board seats. So if we actually had people willing to step in to take on that responsibility of doing the work, you could see significant impact. So I think if you can address a little bit about the training you received and then what you think of the ability to do the task, I think that it could take the fear out of people going, this is too overwhelming.
Yeah. So even if you take a small area where I'm at in Gridley, so there's 2 precincts, right? And it's like a kind of a east and west breakdown. I live on the west side of town. So if you think of it breaking down to split of towns and the training you receive, okay, what is your role as a PC, right? What is the ground game? You're the ant working for the entire colony to get the ground game, get the other ants involved, right? So people, what are the issues? Like you said, what are the main issues for me? You know, I work at the school here locally, and I have friends. Almost our entire town does something either with working in Bloomington or working in the schools here, and they go both to the churches. So the issues are, can we keep the school district how it is? It's comprised of mostly conservative Christian teachers and school board. So we want to keep this area as much red as possible. So it doesn't happen by accident. It happens by continuously educating people and keeping them voted and voting. Because I think you can lose a county area very easily by just saying, "Ah, well, we're solidly in the red. We vote here as a community." We've seen that with the McLean County over the years with the county board. What used to be a very strong conservative board is now a split board because people got complacent and decided not to really get interested in the local board races. And so up here, my responsibility is to keep Gridley as much in the red as possible. That will also help solidify this other end of the county and make sure maybe some of those new voters that haven't voted regularly will vote, and that will overlap some of the issues in other parts of the county. That I'm one ant to the problem, but if I can do my job and above for this area, at least that'll kind of stem over to the other parts of the county. And the training is one thing, so you got to know what you're doing, what you're asked to do, and then you go into what they've given you, the tools they've given you. For being a millennial and having some of the tech growing up in schools and having an iPhone, the app, it's better that I find it easier going door to door with communication and technology in my hand versus having a paper and pencil, because now I have it at the palm of my hand. I can scroll through a list and go, you haven't been talked to in a few months. You haven't been updated. This person moved because I live here and I know there's a new family in that address. So those little things that you kind of think about in your head when you know a small town life, that actually makes it easier to go through your list and go, I know this person. I can talk to them. I can see they moved. I can see this person deceased recently. So you can go all that and know off the top of your head. I just did 10 or 15 people's work right there, because you can only go through your list. Say if I have 100 people that are unreliable because they vote every other election, I've just crossed off 10 or 15 names right there just based on knowing who they are and if they're living here or not, or if they've died. So you already have the work in you already. If you live in a small area, even if you live normal, you know some people already. But having the advantage of living in a small town, you know everybody for the most part, and you know kind of their pattern, and you can have their tool, you have their information with you, so you can utilize that. So I guess the easiest thing for me was it's a no-brainer. If you're born with this generation of using technology, it's really a simple tool to use. And all the information is in there. All you have to do is send a text message or a phone call to set up a contact. Most people, my generation, text people. So you can get help to contact people on the phone. If you can't get a hold of anybody, leave a voicemail, follow-up text. Generally, 99% of the people will probably text back and say, yes, inflation's a big issue. And then you're good to go. You put a note in, and then you're good to go. But the app is really easy to use just from playing around with it for 24 hours. And I feel like the overwhelming issue is just finding out what events you can go to and help people get out and go to those events to get those candidates known. That's the biggest thing. If that's the hardest thing I have to do is go to events and get people educated on who to vote for in the area, then that's probably the easiest job.
Right.
Well, and I think you did a great job of explaining that, Ryan. And the time commitment, obviously, as a millennial, you have a more vested interest in where things are at. I know that a lot of people say, well, it's hard to find active precinct committee people because of the fact that life happens.
Sure.
Well, as Joanne mentioned, why not tackle it as a husband wife, or tackle it as a family, or tackle
Mhm.
it as a group of people within your precinct? You all know your neighbors. I
Right.
got to believe neighbors are getting a sense that, wow, if this is going to be, I've got to get involved. And
Yep.
if I don't get involved, this thing is just going to be on a runaway highway to the proverbial hell.
If you really like your freedom to homeschool, maybe a great project is to get 2 or 3 homeschool moms together and walk a couple of precincts or call a
Yeah.
couple of precincts. 1 or 2 moms could watch kids while the other moms work for a couple hours,
Yep.
because that freedom doesn't have a chance if we don't continue to fight for conservative values.
Yeah.
And it's going to be, all of a sudden something will happen and that freedom could be gone.
Yep.
And yet that 1 or 2 hours a month, that if you collectively brought your resources together and thought about how you could work
Yeah.
together, taking a morning of homeschooling or an afternoon of homeschooling, and pull it together, you could probably take on 5 or 10 precincts as a homeschooling group,
Yeah.
or even a small group. Like if you're in a Bible study, are there 4 or 5 of you that'd be willing to jump in? There are a lot of creative ways and a lot of needs. And if you're not in the religious realm, right, but you have a
Right.
career interest, you're small business owners, right? Are you suffering financially and want to see change? This is a great way to start getting involved, because if people
Yeah.
don't know where to vote or know if they're registered to vote, right there's the starting ground.
Yep.
Well, there is a lot to it, but I don't think it's something that is, is so overwhelming that all of us can't be doing a little better. I think that because of the advent of Cirrus coming into the marketplace here locally, and then of course throughout Illinois, there are other programs out there, and I just don't think they truly have the objective as it's defined by Cirrus. And I know this sounds like a commercial for Cirrus. Well, it's because I've seen so many things come and go, come and go. And here over 40 years, we have a state that has just gained a foothold. I mean, they've captured so much ground
Mhm.
that, as I say over and over, they're not giving any of it back. We're going to have to fortify the territories we have, fortify the counties we have, mobilize people, which I think is what we're doing with finding more precinct committee people, and then going out and continue to spread the word. And these are conversations, we have conversations about a lot of things. Why aren't we conversing about the things that matter most? Our children and grandchildren, of the economy, safe streets, our school systems.
Better schools.
Yeah,
Yeah.
better schools. I mean,
Sometimes what people like to just complain about something instead of they're too shy or too, introverted to do anything about it. They're hoping somebody else takes the foot and go into it. But I'm in the mindset, if it's not going to fix itself. So if I can do my small part, then that's one area covered, and I don't have to worry about depending on somebody else to fix the problems that I could fix myself. If I can
well,
just have conversations with people that I have every day, I'm like, "Hey, can you think about this? What about these gas prices?" And we have 2 gas stations in town. One of them's 3 or 4 cents cheaper than the other one, and it's cheaper to go in there and buy things than it is the other one in town. So conversations like that happen all the time. It's just now you're putting into the work and using the tools the county gives you. So it's really easier, because I've gotten friends and family members registered in the past just by text. I'm like, "Hey, this is important. Here, vote for this person, this person, this. I've done research on this person, this person." It doesn't even matter if you vote for them. Here's the list of names that I'm voting for, because this. If you agree with like-minded things that I'm voting for, then choose these individuals. And I've probably sent 5 or 10 people myself just to the community building every time we've had an election because of that. So you're doing it all together if you think about it. So if you're overwhelmed about being an actual PC, just think of the conversations you have every day and think about who you talk to and who you turn on to vote. It's no different than what you're doing. You're just now putting the system to update everything officially, and it's no easier than what you've been doing already.
the processes work. Hey, Joanne, I know we're up against the end of the show, and I have to say that I'm finding myself similar to how I was in Target Field up in Minneapolis. I told Daniel that I needed to go sit in the sun for a minute, and during the middle of a baseball game, National American League Baseball game, Major League Baseball game, I should say, I was finding myself taking a nap. Now I'm taking a nap during the DPB show, which is good because I have well-able people to do it. I didn't get any sleep last night. Joanne, is there anything else you'd like to kind of wrap things up?
I'm going to answer Sarah's question. She does ask, is it only one person per precinct? So there is one person that is elected as a precinct committeeman. If somebody doesn't run and wants to step into a position after, they can be appointed by their local organization. But you can also recruit somebody, and in McLean County, we're now calling them PC assistants, to help in an area. And that person would have the same access, so that the task can be divided. You guys, and we have 2 examples of that right now. We have 2 precincts where 2 people are working on it, because one person didn't want to run again because their schedule is going to be a little more travel and things like that. So somebody else ran in their place, but she's still helping, right? As if all the people she knows, all the relationships that she has.
I'm offering that as well. And in the 2 precincts up here, I can also help out Perry too.
Right. And so, so you would not hold the title, you would be PC assistant coming alongside. Also, if there's empty precincts and we really can't recruit somebody, we can appoint somebody outside of a precinct to serve in that area. They just can't run for it. You do have to live in the precinct that you're going to run for. But we in empty precincts that are strategic and we want to get people doing work, we could appoint somebody if somebody's willing to work in a precinct. So that it's 2 answers in there. One, yes, 2 people can work a precinct. One is only considered the actual appointed precinct committeeman. Right. The other one would be the PC assistant. And a PC can be appointed into an area they don't live if there's a need to really get work done in that area.
Okay, Chad Burke's got a question. I kind of missed that. It might have been when I closed my eyes. Chad is County Board District 5 candidate. He is going up against Elizabeth Johnson. Elizabeth Johnson is just someone that we need to extract from the county board. She has nothing. She has nothing in her forward-looking growth plan that isn't based out of Sal Alinsky's playbook. I mean, these folks are socialists / bordering on communists. They don't get it, and yet that's who Chad's running against. Chad says, does a PC organize local town hall meeting, invite town, county, school board, state government to attend, to discuss, listen, educate about issues?
That is entirely up to the PC. And right now, one of the things we're really encouraging, the Surus battle program is encouraging first to start building the rapport, because so many people in a precinct don't even know who their precinct committeeman is or what that role is. So we really have to reestablish a ground level of what that is. I think in time, you're going to see those things start to come back into the picture. It's not a formal job responsibility of them. And it's certainly, if a candidate wants to do something on their own accord in an area, they should be doing what they need to do for their own campaign. But what we don't want to do is tax a PC to the point that if they get so focused on trying to coordinate events, they're not building the relationships with the people. And I say that because it's one thing to plan one event, maybe every 6 months, just here's a meet and greet, let's get coffee type of thing. But if there's this expectation that they're going to plan this for this candidate or have this school board night, and then they become an event planner instead of a relational build with the with their constituents. So it's an important balance. And because we've not had PCs fully established in the direction, and we're changing the expectation of what that role looks like now. It used to be people would see their PC twice a year. That was about it. We're saying we have to build that rapport a little bit more. So we can't expect that of them, but the hope would be as they get more people interested, then they can build a team of people that somebody might be very willing to help coordinate that in their precinct, because now they know 5 or 6 people
Yeah, and I probably know of him. I just have never met him personally. I mean, he's that much younger or older than me, but I have never met Perry. But I haven't really been to too many events where he's been a part of and kind of out and about. So it's just the nature of it. Even if in a small town, there's still a possibility you don't meet your local county help.
Perry was a corporal in the Civil War. That was a joke. That was a joke.
Yeah, that was a joke.
I think Perry's like 85 years of age. Bless his heart.
But I will leave people with this last, even if you have a few hours and you'd be willing, talk to your local chairman if you're outside of McLean County, talk to the election operations in McLean County, who is Kim Miller, and just start that conversation, because every 2 hours, every hour makes a difference. And same across the board in all of our central Illinois counties and throughout the state. I will tell you one last number, and that is the victory number statewide is if we can increase voter turnout above its normal amount by 562,399 votes. We see that needle moving red.
There'll be a shift.
So
500,000.
562 plus.
Okay.
But yeah,
that's
500,000.
That's the nuts and bolts. That's what I was asking. What number do we need to realize a Republican victory? And it's 500,000 votes, which makes sense in light of what Pritzker
above
has done.
normal turnout.
Mm-hmm.
And in Illinois, that is not converting a lot of people to the party. It is converting unreliable voters to the polls.
Okay, so there's still time. I don't know if you have to RSVP. There is an event tomorrow in McLean County at the Freedom Baptist Church, which is just off of Veterans Parkway, South Veterans Parkway. Freedom Baptist Church, I think it starts at 12. It's a candidate forum. It's an opportunity. The candidates are going to be there informing you about what just transpired in Springfield. Obviously, we kind of have a good idea. It wasn't good for any of us, but I wrapped it up in a matter of, but still go, because I think it's important that we support our elected people and we also hold them accountable, because it's one thing to see this happen year after year after year after year, and all they can give back to us is we're in the super minority. What is our plan to get out of the super minority? And I think Joanne just laid out a plan and the victory number that shows that we can do it. We just need to get people working.
Yep.
All right. That was a good show. Thank you, Joanne. Thank you, Ryan.
Absolutely.
And now, Joanne, if you realize it, when I hit the end button, you actually don't go away. You and Ryan and I are still in studio. So maybe we'll have a chance to just say hello and thank you. I'm feeling the effects of Camp Grandma and up here in Minnesota. So I am going to end the show now, but I hope that the two of you hang around for a minute. Tuesday, we'll be back. We'll be back in studio. And we're going to have a lot of information. I want to get into the Trump thing, but, just realize anything the Democrats are doing right now is grossly misfiring on them. And that's going to resonate not only at the national level, but at the state level. If you think J.B. Pritzker, by adding another $1 billion in illegal immigration assistance, is going to be better for the state of Illinois, if you believe that these municipalities that are continuing to pander to the ways of Joe Biden and J.B. Pritzker is a key to success for the American people, it's not going to happen. That's why it's so important we get involved. Hey, once again, I always end the show. I love you. Jesus loves you more. Until Tuesday, farewell.